What we're going to do today is actually start learning how to solve blah blah blah. Let's try this one more time. One of these days I'm going to have to learn how to talk or just not say silly words. Anyways, hey guys, this is Josh with Next Step Cubing. What we're going to do today is actually learn how to solve the cube using a method called CFOP. Now, CFOP is an acronym for the steps used to be able to solve the cube. The steps that we're going to use, and we're going to go through these in many different videos just to be able to get used to it. But the steps we're going to use is doing the first step, which is the cross. So in this example, I'm going to solve the white cross by doing something like this. And then my white cross is solved. The next step would be to solve our F2Ls, which the term F2Ls is basically another acronym basically for our first two layers, which is basically doing 4 different move sets to be able to slot in our corner and our edge pieces like this. Okay, the next move that we have is doing our OLL, which is orienting our last layer, just putting all the yellow pieces on top like that. And then finally, our last step in doing CFOP is doing the PLL, which is permutating our last layer, putting all our edges and corners in the right spot. What we're going to focus on today is the first step, which is going to be the cross. Now, if you remember, we're going to do a quick scramble here, but if you remember when we did it in the beginner's method, the easiest way for me to do the cross was to actually just start with the yellow side on top like this, and then we'll find all our white edges, and we'll just basically move our white edges up to this yellow side like that. And we keep doing that until we got all the white edges up like this. Okay, after we got our daisy, all we did was line up our colors to our centers, and then we just moved those edges down to the bottom layer. Now, doing it that way, it does solve our cross, but the thing is, when we do it that way, it takes a lot of extra time and it takes extra moves just to be able to do it that way. So doing the cross using CFOP is going to be a little bit quicker because we're going to try and shortcut a few things. One of the main things that you need to know when doing CFOP is knowing your color scheme for the cube. So if I have my white center on the bottom, I know if I have blue in front of me, on the right side of blue is going to be red, on the left side of blue would be orange, and on the back side would be green. Okay, and I know that for each color on the side that I put in front of me. So knowing that color scheme, I know that if I set my pieces already to the bottom, like for instance, red's already set on the white side. So I'm going to use that as my starting point. I know that on the right side of red, it's going to be green. So I can find my green and white edge here like this, and I'll turn it to where it's going to be on this side of red. Now, I know it's not going to line up with our center, but as long as we keep the same relative position and set our pieces in that position like that, we can fix that part at the end. So with that said, I know that on the right side of green is going to be orange, and I see orange up here. So I can do something like this to kind of put it in the right spot like that. So now I have 3 of them. And then my last one is going to be blue right here. So I can do something like this. I can put this in the right spot like this. And after that, all the pieces are set in the right relative position. They're not be lined up, but all we have to do to line it up is, like I said before, turn that bottom layer and all the pieces will line up. The more that you practice it, the easier it becomes. But I'm going to show you a few things that way you can kind of get used to solving the cross a little bit faster. First off, when I look for the edges, what I look for is if I have any good edges or bad edges. Now, a good edge is any edge that I can use probably just one move to actually set it on the bottom. for instance, I have my orange edge here. I know it's not in the right relative position. I have my orange edge here, and all I have to do to set that is move it down like that, and it will be on the bottom. Okay. The same thing with the pieces that are already on the bottom. They're already ready to go like that. Or even if they're on top like this, I can easily just move it where I need to and then just turn it to the bottom like that. I also have bad edges. Bad edges are the edges that look like this. They're going to be at the top but flip like this, or on the bottom flip like that. And what that means is, instead of taking just one move to solve it, I'm going to have to take two. Like for instance, to put this green on the bottom, I would have to turn it to the side like this for one move, and then turn it down for another move. So a lot of times when we have these bad edges, what I like to do, instead of taking two moves to solve one edge, I'll look for any move like this orange one right here that takes one move. I will place this edge here. That way I can probably just move this down, and it turns my bad edge into a good edge, which makes it easier to solve that way. Another category that I have would be what I call ugly edges, and I'm trying to set it up real quick. But ugly edges are basically when you have 1, 2, 3, or two or more bad edges like that. So when it comes to doing any of these ugly edges, like I call them, the best thing to do is just try to see if I'm able to actually set up more than one of the bad edges into good edges. Like the red and green that I have right here, I can turn this way and it'll actually set both of these up into good edges. And then after that, I can move my orange over. When I put red down, it changes my orange into a good edge. So doing little tricks like that will help you out when it comes to solving your edges, things like that. The only other thing that I can tell you right now is what position to kind of start in. Another way of doing or solving the cube is if you do with the white on top like this. And when you do it white on top like this, you're actually able to see what pieces are there, what pieces you need to set up. And it makes it easier to do something like this because you can see exactly, oh, I know this piece has to go here. And then I know this piece has to go here. Okay, and I'll see where the pieces need to go. Now, the only bad thing about doing it that way is that once I'm done with that step, with the white on top, I have to turn the cube over, and then I have to start looking for my next set of moves, which that does take time, and if you're speed solving, that adds extra seconds, which you probably don't want. Okay, another way of doing it is if you want to do with the white side, I'm just using white as example, white on the side like this. So doing it on the side, I can be able to, or I'm able to actually still solve it using pretty much the same method, but using or putting everything on this side. Now, doing it this way, it makes it just a little bit more difficult to see exactly if the edge pieces are being put in the right spot, but it makes it easier to see what's coming up in our next step. Now, the unfortunate thing is that we still have that cube turn to go from here into this position. So it does take some time to kind of get used to doing that cube turn. And finally, we have it to where we put the cross we're working with on the bottom. So in this case, I like to do it this way because with the white on bottom, I can see basically what's going to be coming up next. So the only issue about doing it with the white on bottom is making sure that as you're doing it, you can't really see if the pieces that you're kind of placing are in the right spot. You kind of have to, well, not guess, but hope that you're actually doing the right moves to place them in the right spot. But doing it this way, you also see what's on top and you're able to actually get started right away with that next step. Okay, so a lot of it's going to be personal preference, but as you're advancing and as you're learning more and more about doing the speed cube, I would advise you to work on just getting the white cross on the bottom. So some other tips that I can tell you. First off, if you are solving the cube and you're trying to get your time down, you're learning how to speed solve, what's going to help you is if you plan out your moves. What I'm saying is if I put green first, and then orange, and then I can adjust my bottom face to do red on the back side. It'll look something like this. So doing it that way, you have a better chance of solving the cube faster. And as you're doing the moves you already have planned out, you can start looking for the pieces for your next move. Another thing to do would be finger tricks. Now, if you saw in the last one, I was using a few finger tricks to try to solve our cube. If I just do finger tricks, I don't have to keep turning the cube over and over again. I can just plan out my moves and then just go from there. So I can do different finger tricks to kind of help get me started with solving the cube. All right, and the last little tip that I can give you is if you want to do things like colorblind solving. And what that is instead of starting with the color you used to, like I'm used to doing white on the bottom, but instead of starting with white on the bottom, if I wanted to do something like maybe red on the bottom, I can, see where my first set of moves are going to be, and I can just plan out from there. Doing stuff like colorblind solving, it's a little bit more difficult because in this case, you kind of have to know your color scheme fairly well, because if you solve with it on the bottom, you have to continue solving your cube in that pattern for the rest of the steps. Other than that, that's really all I have. If you have any questions or comments, just kind of leave it on the bottom there. I don't really fish for likes. If you notice, I don't ask for any likes, but if you do like the videos, you can just drop a like and things like that. But other than that, hope everybody's having a good day. I thank you guys for watching and dealing with me rambling on and on and on about the cube. But other than that, I will catch you guys on the flip side.